All right, we are live. Hey, how is it going? Lee Hayward here with the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat for Friday, September the 8th. Hopefully, you're having a good Friday. This is a busy week for us. This is the first week back to school here in Canada. That's when school starts, is the first week of September. So this week, getting little Harvey back on track. And that's actually been a good thing for us here because now we have a little bit of time for my wife and I to go to the gym together. And that's exactly what we've been doing now since he's been back to school. So that's been nice. Certainly enjoying that. All right, let's see. Who do we have popping on here? We are streaming from two platforms, from Facebook as well as the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. So I'm just hanging out here for a moment, letting people pop onto our live stream. As you join me, please type into the chat window or in the comment section, wherever it is that you're watching from, and let me know if this is coming through loud and clear, if you can hear me and see me and all that good stuff. All right, I always wanted to make sure. Lee says it is coming through loud and clear. Thumbs up. Appreciate it. Thank you much. Awesome. So for those of you who are brand new to these video chats, and I know every week we do get some new people joining in, which is great. And the more the merrier. But the way these video chats work is I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour, answering questions and topics of discussion related to fitness and nutrition, building muscle, losing fat, improving your overall health and wellness. So if there is anything that you would like to discuss regarding those topics, feel free to type in your questions, topics of discussion into the chat window or into the comment section, and I'll do the best that I can to help you out over the course of our video chat today. All right, and as you're jumping on board, let me know where you're tuning in from as well. It's always nice to see where people are joining in from, because I know we do get an international audience. So we go live at 5 most Fridays, live at 5, meaning 5 p.m. Eastern time. But it'd be interesting to know when that is in your local time zone. So please let me know what time it is and where you're tuning in from as you're popping on. So let's see, we have Kane joining in, says he's from over in New Zealand. So I'm guessing this is an early Saturday morning over in New Zealand. Welcome, Kane. Glad to have you joining in. We've got Robert joining in as well. Hey, Robert, regular to our video chat. And I believe, Robert, you sent me a question through Facebook earlier. Refresh my memory and post it here in the video chat and let me know what it was. Something along the lines of sleep. I can't. Anyway, post your questions and topics of discussion, because I know some people do share their questions and topics of discussion with me in Facebook Messenger. I'm very active over on Facebook. We got our Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. So a lot of times people will post questions for future Q&A there. And you're certainly more than welcome to do that as well. So let's see who's joining in. We got a Cool Gamer joining in. He's a regular to our chats. We've got Ange. I'll jump into that one in a second. Question. Just want to let everybody pop on the chat here. We have Abdul from Qatar. Wow, awesome. Glad to have you joining in. And Kane says it's 9:07 a.m. over in New Zealand. Awesome. Robert joining in at 4:07. We have Mick, 7 a.m. in Australia. Abdul's a night owl, burning the midnight oil, literally 12:07 a.m. over in Qatar. Oh, I appreciate the commitment, even though you should be getting your sleep. Right? All right, let's see what else we got there. Who else is joining in live? Let me know. We have Valley, Fountain Hills, Arizona. Interesting. I've never been there before myself. In fact, there's a lot of places here I haven't been to. I haven't been to New Zealand or Qatar, or I have been to Arizona, but not in Fountain Hills. David joining in. Welcome, David. We have Mo joining in. Welcome. Glad to have you. Ryan is joining in. Good day, my friends. Glad to have you joining in. And again, if you're brand new to the video chats, welcome. It's always nice to have new people hopping on board. All right, let's jump into this one. This is the first question of the day from Ange. It says, hey, Lee, everybody usually recommends 7 to 9 hours of sleep for optimal muscle growth. Just a little side note there. That's not just muscle growth. That's usually health and wellness in general. There's so many benefits to sleep. But yeah, 7 to 9 hours tends to be the general rule of thumb. It says, I only sleep 6 hours a night, sometimes 6.5, and I feel perfectly fine. I can't sleep any longer than that. And this is a good question, or a good observation, I should say, and something we can discuss, because the general rule of thumb of, the 8 hours, which is right between the 7 and the 9, that whole 8 hours, it's a guideline, but there's always going to be variations and exceptions to the rule. So some people may function very well with a lot of sleep, 9 hours or more. Some people, such as yourself, may function on the lower end, in that 6.5 hours or so. And bottom line, it's what do you feel the best at? If you get your 6 hours of sleep and it's a good quality sleep and you wake up feeling well rested, then I don't see any problem with that as long as you're feeling good and functioning good. And for a lot of for me, if I get 6 good hours of sleep, I feel fine. I can function on 6 good hours of sleep. If it's less than that, or if it's broken or disturbed sleep, that's when I find that my strength, energy, mental function, and everything else kind of suffers, especially if it happens over the long term. Like a scatter night, if you have a poor night's sleep, it's usually not a big deal. But if you have several nights in a row of poor quality sleep, maybe you're going through some stressful times or working overtime or traveling and whatever, something that really disrupts your sleep schedule, then that can really throw a wrench into things. But generally, as long as you're consistently feeling well rested, that's the main thing. And as far as the guidelines, I wouldn't stress over it. If you're getting 6 good hours of sleep and you find that it's a good, deep, restful sleep and you're feeling fine, then go for it. I'm at the stage now where I rarely need an alarm clock. In fact, if I have something urgent to do in the morning, or I have to get up, like I have a flight to catch or an important meeting or something, then yeah, I'll probably set the alarm clock as a backup. But if I don't have anything pressing first thing in the morning, I don't set an alarm, and I usually wake up around the same time every morning. So it's my internal alarm clock, anywhere between 6 a.m. ish, in that range. It may be a little earlier, maybe a little later, but for me, I try to get to bed around 10 p.m. and I'm up again around 6-ish. And that's my personal pattern. Now, it will vary. Sometimes it's a little later getting to bed. Like when I say getting to bed by 10 p.m., that's probably getting ready for bed at 10 p.m. I'm actually in bed and probably asleep by 11. And then if I'm up again at 6, I usually feel fine. All right. That's usually my schedule. And I don't need an alarm clock to wake me up. And I wake up feeling rested and ready to go. But yeah, it's a good observation. And the bottom line, don't stress over it. Right. If you're feeling good, then go with it. I think Robert also had a question about sleep. Let's see. Did he put it in there? Okay, Robert's saying, I haven't been sleeping good. I know we're messaging back and forth through Facebook, and he was talking about sleep here. So that's why I just kind of, we're starting off on a sleepy start to today's video chat. It says, I haven't been sleeping good. Just wondering if you ever work out when you didn't sleep well. If it's only an occasional night, like if I had one bad night of sleep, I'm probably not going to notice the impact of that. But if it's something that's going on chronically, like I'm going prolonged periods of time with poor sleep, then I will adjust my workouts accordingly. I'll probably still work out, but I'm not going to be expecting to hit any personal records. I'm not going to be pushing the envelope in terms of intensity or volume or anything like that. And when I don't feel well rested or fully charged, if you will, I give myself permission to go through the motions with an easier workout. So I will adjust the volume and the intensity of my training based on how I'm feeling that day in the moment. Now, these days, you can get all kinds of smart gadgets, sleep trackers and, smart watches and Aura rings and God knows what else, that track your sleep and your recovery and all that. And there's some benefit to those. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you can certainly use them and kind of use that as a guideline, but it's always nice to have that internal perceived awareness as well, like being in tune with your body and knowing how you feel. Do you feel rested? And if you do, great, go for it. If you don't, then factor that in. Like, let's just assume you're using one of these smartwatches and it says you're fully rested and recovered today, and you wake up and you're feeling exhausted and tired and everything else. Don't expect to go into the gym and crush it. If you're feeling tired, you're feeling tired, right? You can't ignore your internal feelings. And I would prioritize that over what some smartwatch fitness gadget says. Now, I use smartwatch fitness gadgets for my own workouts. I use like heart rate monitors and power meters and all that kind of stuff. And I'm tracking my workouts with a Garmin and all that, especially my cardio and cycling workouts. But I don't take it too literally. I always have my own internal, how am I really feeling, and my own perceived awareness. So if I'm feeling good, I'm ready to go out there and crush it and push it. Even if the gadget says, oh, you're not fully recovered or whatever. And vice versa. Even if the gadget says I'm recovered, but I don't feel recovered, then I'm going to scale it back to an easier workout. And I find that it's better to try and keep the consistency in place, keep the consistency with the workouts, just monitor and adjust the volume and the intensity. And sometimes it could be as easy as literally just, today I'm not feeling well rested or whatever, I'm just going to go for an easy walk. I'm going to still keep myself active. I'm still going to do something, but it's not going to be stress in the central nervous system. It's not going to be stress in my recovery. It's not going to be breaking down muscle tissue. It's just going to be an easy active recovery. Let's get outside and go for a walk in the park. Could literally be as simple as that. And I find that helps to regulate things, keeping the consistency, because that's the key when it comes to having a good sleep routine, as being consistent with your workouts, consistent with your meals, consistent with your bedtime, consistent with your get up time. The more consistency you can build and kind of stick to that, the better it's going to be. Now, it doesn't mean that things are not going to go astray from time to time. Like you have a late night or an early morning, or you skip a workout or you skip a meal occasionally. But overall, like 80% of the time, try to be on track. And it's what you're doing the majority of the time that matters the most, not what you do every blue moon, right? It's what you're doing consistently. And just like with your workouts or with anything, it's think of it like a balancing act, right? You don't have to be all perfect, or you don't have to be all shit. Like there's going to be some ups and downs, but try to have more good days than bad. And as long as you're having more good days than bad, you can still make progress. But this is a challenging one for a lot of people, is the whole sleep issue. And if this has been going on for a while, it might be worth talking to somebody, like talking to your doctor, talking to a specialist or someone who can guide you with this, because chronic sleep deprivation or chronic poor quality of sleep, that can really accumulate and deteriorate your whole quality of life, not just your workouts, but everything in general. So you definitely want to try and regulate that. And I have to say, since I became a father, and since I have a child who's going to school, which this is another good point about school starting up again, it really helps to regulate our schedule, because I mirror my schedule off my son's schedule. So try to get him in bed by, getting ready for bed around 8 o'clock. Hopefully it's, lights out, eyes shut, snoozing away by 9 at the latest. And then he usually gets up at 7 in the morning. So the way I work it is, shortly after I get him to bed, then I get ready for bed. I get up just before he gets up, right? So I can help get him ready. And I kind of mirror my schedule off my son's sleep schedule. And I find since I've been doing that, it's really helped to regulate my sleep, because prior to that, when I was younger and no kids and in control of my schedule, I was very haphazard. Like there was nights where I was probably just getting turned on and fired up at 1 a.m. and then literally working into the wee hours of the morning. Like there have been times when I've hit the gym at midnight for a workout, and I mean, I made it work and pulled it off. And especially in the early days of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel, like if you watch some of those earlier videos that I made, especially in the mid 2000s, you know, around like 2010-ish range, a lot of people said, "Oh, you must have a private gym that you train at." I said, "No, I'm here at midnight. I'm training at the gym when nobody else is there," which is a plus side to doing late night workouts, but the downside is it totally messes up your circadian rhythm, and you don't know when you're supposed to be sleeping or awake or whatever. So I have to admit that my sleep schedule was all over the place for a while, and I feel much better now that it's regulated and I'm going to bed at a decent hour, getting up at a decent hour, and I'm consistently with that. And not only that, now that I'm older and living a boring life, no, parties on the weekend and nightclubs and all that stuff, it's consistent right through the week. Like weekdays, weekends, there's no difference. Like my sleep schedule is pretty much the same. Now I know that's not the same for everybody, but it is for me. And I find that consistency has really helped. But yeah, you really got to listen to your body when it comes to the sleep and adjusting your intensity accordingly. All right, let's see who else we have joining in. It's nice we got our international audience of people joining in, and I see some new names as well, which is great. Rock says, "Hello, Lee. I'm very busy with my job, so what do you recommend to maintain muscle mass? I don't want to lose my gains. I usually go to gym 3 times a week." If you're hitting the gym 3 times a week, I don't think you have any fear of losing gains. In fact, 3 times a week is actually one of the best routines for optimizing gains. I know back when I had the time to train as often as I liked, and would sometimes get into the more is better mentality and trying to take, if 3 days a week is good, then 4 days is better, 5 days is even better, 6, 7 every day. Let's just go twice a day, like that kind of mentality. More is better. And it usually leads to diminishing returns. And that's where overtraining and burnout can really, compound and accumulate. I actually made my best strength and muscle gains when I was doing 3 workouts a week or every other day. Like workout one day, take the next day off, workout one day, take the next day off. And even now I follow a similar approach. So when I go to the gym, it's usually every other day, 3 days a week. And then on my off days from the gym, that's when I'll do cardio training. And I'm usually pretty consistent with that. And I find that is very optimal, especially from a muscle building point of view, because you don't build muscle when you're in the gym working out. Like that's a misconception a lot of people have. They think, if I'm not in the gym, then I'm not building muscle. I got to be in the gym more and I got to train more. And it's counterintuitive, because the training itself is simply the stimulus. When you go and you work out in the gym and you're placing stress and demands on the muscle, you're breaking it down. You're tearing that muscle down. It's in the rest recovery that the growth happens. So it's outside of the gym is when the actual progress happens. What you're doing in the gym, even though it may feel like you're being productive because you're stimulating the growth, and of course you get all pumped up and you feel like, oh, I'm working hard, I'm building muscle. You're not building in the gym. The workout itself is actually catabolic. You're tearing down the muscle, but you're providing stimulus for the body to rebuild and grow back stronger so it can handle that stress in the future. And the whole idea of progressive overload is you want to gradually increase the stress that you place on the muscles so that they gradually get bigger and stronger over time. But the critical element there is the rest and recovery in between those workouts. That's where the growth happens. So in your situation, only going to the gym 3 times a week, actually that's perfect. And ideally those 3 workouts would be on non-consecutive days. Now, I understand our lives are not perfect. Like us, I know some of my coaching students who worked weird shift work. Like I had one guy who was a truck driver, and I was coaching him and he had a weird schedule where he was working really long shifts, like 12 plus hour days, 3 or 4 days a week. I can't remember. Anyway, something like that. And then then he had a 3 or 4 day gap afterwards. Like it was a weird shift work, right? So it was 3 or 4 days of extremely long days, 3 or 4 days totally off, and then kept repeating over and over in a cycle. So in his situation, rather than trying to squeeze in workouts and sacrifice sleep and everything else, we said, hey, do your gym workouts on your off days when you're working, work, eat, sleep, try to maximize those elements. And even though it wasn't perfect or wasn't optimal, it was still good enough. And he made a great progress by bunching his workouts together. So, I mean, he had a block of really intense training, and then he'd have several days of rest, recovery, and growth. A block of intense training, several days of rest, recovery, and growth. And he made it work. But ideally, in an optimal situation, you would work out one day, take the next day off, work out one day, take the next day off, so that you're approaching each workout feeling fresh and recovered, and not accumulating that fatigue by working out multiple days in a row and kind of digging yourself into a little rut. All right, moving on. Let's see what else we got there. TS joining in. It says, when do you know it's the right time to add weight on a bodybuilding program? I'm doing 3 sets of 10 reps on a full body program 3 times a week. All right, that's a good place to start for sure. And the simple answer for this is when the weight starts to feel easy and you know you can lift more, then increase the weight or increase the repetitions. There's 2 ways of going about progressive overload. Well, there's technically more, but there's 2 common ways that I want you to focus on. Is either more reps or more weight. Now, of course, there's other ways where you can do more volume, more frequency, shorter rest periods, and all that. There's a lot more, but for the sake of this question and for the sake of simplicity, we're going to focus on progressive overload and increasing weight or increasing repetitions. And I would recommend probably working within a repetition range. So what I would recommend, if 3 times 10 is your working sets, when you can complete all 3 sets of 10 with a given weight, and you can do so comfortably with good form, and you know what, at the end of that, you say, I could have done more. I think, I just did bench press, 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds, felt easy, good form, no problem. I think next workout, I'm going to try 105, and see if I can do 3 sets of 10 with 105. That's a good way to go about it, is when you can complete your sets and reps with good form, no cheating, no momentum or whatever, and it feels like you can do more, then do more, but make small jumps. Like that's where those little 2.5 pound plates at the gym come into play. Or if you have smaller weight plates, even take advantage of those as well. But most fitness gyms, at least in North America, I know we have an international audience. A lot of people are using weights in kilos, but in North America, most gyms have their weights in pounds. And those 2.5 pound weight plates are great because that's where you can go up by 5 pounds per, 5 pound jumps for your barbell exercises. Where it gets a bit tricky is when you're doing dumbbells and machine exercises that don't allow small increments in weight. So for example, like if you're doing dumbbell curls and you're curling 20 pound dumbbells, well, the next jump up is 25s, but it's not just a 5 pound jump. It's actually a 10 pound jump because you got 5 pound increase on each side. So that's a 10 pound jump. And that could be a big jump for a lot of people. So this is where working within a repetition range can really help. So in that situation, let's just say you're doing your dumbbell curls and you get 3 sets of 10 with the 20 pound dumbbells, and that feels good. And you say, you know what, I think I can do more. I would recommend, let's try 3 sets of 11 for your next workout. See how that feels. If that goes good, then hey, try 3 sets of 12. See how that feels. If that goes good, then what you could probably do is up to the 25s and then drop the reps down to probably 8. So then I'm going to do 3 sets of 8 with the 25 pound dumbbells and see how that feels. If it feels good, then try 3 sets of 9, and 3 sets of 10, and 3 sets of 11, 3 sets of 12. Build it up within that 8 to 12 rep range. So if you can't get at least 8 reps, the weight's too heavy. You need to lighten it up. And if you can get way more than 12, then the weight is too light and you need to increase it. So that's a good way to go about it, working within a repetition range. And that's ideal for exercises where the jump is so big that it doesn't make sense. Like in the case of, adding 5 pounds to a 20 pound dumbbell curl is a lot different than adding 5 pounds to a 200 pound leg press, right? Like percentage wise, it's massive difference. Like 5 pounds on a 20 pound dumbbell curl is 25%, whereas 5 pounds on a 200 pound leg leg presses, small percent. So look at it from that perspective. It's the percentage of increase. So you have two options: increasing the reps or increasing the weight. Now, for the bigger compound lifts, your big barbell lifts and stuff like that, should be no problem adding 5 pounds for your increments. But for when it's not practical, increasing the reps is a good one. Another thing I'm going to acknowledge here as well: certain exercises you're not going to make fast gains with, fast strength gains. There's going to be some exercises in your routine where you're going to kind of settle into a weight range and simply focusing on working the muscle. And a prime example of that is side lateral raises. Actually, a lot of my coaching students have asked me this one, so that's why I want to acknowledge it here. They're saying like, oh, I can't make 5-pound jumps in my side lateral raises. And I said, that's first off, it's a huge jump, but that's an exercise where you don't need to be powering up heavy weights. It's an isolation exercise, and I would much rather you use lighter weights, strict form, a good mind-muscle connection, really feeling that muscle working, rather than simply trying to swing up heavier weights, because that's going to lead to diminishing returns. And in my case, like with the side lateral raises, I don't purposely try and do progressive overload every week. I'll keep the same weight and really focusing on getting that mind-muscle connection, getting a good pump, feeling the muscles work. And if I want to make it harder, then I slow down the tempo and really focus on holding that peak contraction at the top, really squeezing it, holding it for an extra second at the top. That way I'm getting more muscle stimulation, working harder with the same weight versus increasing the weight. Then, of course, you'll get to the point where that weight feels really easy and you can do high reps with it and you'll be able to increase it, but it's going to be a lot slower. Like you'll be increasing your squat and your bench press and your rows and all those other exercises way faster and way more frequently than you will small isolation exercises like side lateral raises and dumbbell curls and tricep kickbacks and whatever. So take that into consideration as well. The isolation exercises, especially the smaller ones, they're going to be slower to increase. You're not going to be putting on 5 pounds a week or anything like that. It's going to be a slow, much slower compared to your bench presses, your squats and rows and deadlifts and overhead presses and leg presses and whatever, all those big, heavy compound movements where you're engaging a lot of muscle and you're using bigger weights in general. But hopefully that helps to clarify when to increase the weight. And another thing I'm going to mention here is don't be in a rush. Like, we've got time. Like, a lot. This is a kind of a side tangent, but it's worth mentioning here because a lot of people are in a rush to get in shape. Like, they could go for weeks, months, or sometimes even years neglecting their health and fitness. But once they muster up the motivation to start a workout program or start a diet, or I'm going to get myself back in shape, they put this pressure on themselves. Like, I got to do it now. Like, it's got to be fast, rapid. Like, I got to get in shape in the next 30 days. Like, boom, boom, boom. And it's almost like going from zero to hero overnight. We got time. Like, you don't worry about what are you lifting in the next 6 weeks or even in the next 6 months, because think, where are you going to be in the next 6 years? Right? Where are you going to be in the next 10 years or longer? Like, hopefully you got a lot of years ahead of you. And we want to enjoy the journey, right? It's not all about seeing how fast you can jack up the weights or how fast you can progress in the short term. Because a lot of times if you push it too hard too soon, that's going to lead to injury, going to lead to burnout, and probably derail your progress and actually set you back. But if you can make slow, steady progress, and I know slow and steady doesn't sound sexy, but slow and steady leads to massive change over time. And if you look at anybody you admire, whether it's a fitness influencer or an athlete or whoever, anybody who has built an impressive physique and has sustained it for a long time, they just didn't do it in a 30-day or 6-week or 12-week or something like that. It's something that they've been working on for years. And that's what you have to think of. You have to think bigger, long-term, and you've got time. So don't be in too big of a rush to increase the weights, right? Build it up as you feel comfortable in doing so, and realize we're in this for the long haul, right? As long as you're putting one foot in front of the other and you're moving in the right direction, you'll eventually get to your goal. But don't be in such a mad rush where you're increasing the weights too fast, or you're cutting the calories too strict, or doing too much cardio and burning yourself out in the process. You want to go at a slow, manageable pace that you can actually sustain and enjoy without disrupting and risking injury and burnout in the process. All right, so a lot of content for a simple question, but hopefully you found it helpful. We have the Dead Fish Lord. Hello, welcome. Glad to have you joining in. Ron Rodriguez. Is creatine and whey protein good for cutting? Yes. I'll elaborate on that. First off, creatine, a lot of people think, oh, creatine is going to hinder my cut or hinder my weight loss. And from a pure weight loss point of view, it may have a negative impact. But from a fat loss point of view, it's going to have no impact whatsoever. And in fact, it can actually help the process along, because most people who are working out, weight training, and eating right and all that, most like you guys watching this right now, most of the people watching this, you want to build muscle and lose body fat. Now, I know there's some exceptions to the rule, but I can say I would be willing to bet 8 out of 10 of the people watching this right now, 80% would say, I want to build muscle and lose fat, or some combination thereof. And maybe you want to focus on fat loss as a more of a priority and muscle gain as a secondary. Maybe you want to prioritize muscle gain as a priority and fat loss as a secondary. But most of you want a body recomposition. You want more muscle and less fat. Now, I know there's the other 20% might be athletic performance or some other specific health-related goal you're working on. Then, the body composition is not your primary focus. But most people, body composition is the big focus, right? Building muscle and losing fat. Creatine can help with that, because when you go on a lower calorie diet, you're in a calorie deficit. Very often that can make your muscles feel flatter and weaker and hinder some of your strength. And it can actually put you into a catabolic state when it comes to muscle building. Creatine helps to pull water and nutrients in the muscles. It has this cell volumizing effect. And a hydrated cell, a volumized cell, is a healthy cell. And it's actually going to help to minimize muscle loss if you're in an aggressive calorie deficit. Now, not that I recommend being in a very aggressive calorie deficit, but regardless, it's still going to help minimize muscle loss, or even help with building muscle while you're losing body fat. And when you pull water and nutrients into the cells, that's going to create weight gain. So if you've never taken creatine before and you're in a creatine deficiency, if you will, or like less than optimal levels, when you start taking it initially, you may notice a bit of weight gain, like somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 pounds is pretty common for a lot of guys. Now, it may be more, maybe less. Like some people take it and they don't really notice much weight gain at all. Others will notice somewhere in that 3 to 5 pound weight gain. But it's not fat. It's water and nutrients being pulled into the cells, and it's creating that volumization. Like you're filling up your cells, muscle cells. It's not adding layers of blubber to your fat cells. So you got to realize weight gain and fat gain are not the same thing, right? Water and fat are two totally different things. So water is good, fat not so much. So creatine is actually going to help to maintain your strength and your muscle fullness as you lose body fat. So it can be very powerful when combined with a fat loss program. Whey protein. I want you to look at protein, whether it's whey protein or any type of protein powder, as just another source of protein food. It's like there's nothing magical or special about whey protein. Like, just look at, okay, I could have a chicken breast, I could have a scoop of protein powder. It's just another serving of protein. Right? I could have a can of tuna fish, or I could have a scoop of protein powder. Like, that's it. Like, look at it the same as you would a can of tuna, a chicken breast, a piece of fish or steak or whatever. It's just another source of protein. Now, the benefit of protein powder is it's convenient. It tastes good, especially if you get a good one. And it's very versatile. Like, you can mix it up in a shake. You can mix it up in a blender smoothie. You can mix it in with high protein oatmeal. You can have like a cup of yogurt and mix in a scoop of protein powder, make like a high protein pudding. You got a lot of options for it, and it adds versatility and convenience to your protein intake. Like if maybe you don't have time to cook up a chicken breast, but you got time to shake up a quick little protein shake. So the convenience factor is there. Another one that we need to factor in as well is cost. Protein powder on a gram for gram basis is usually a lot cheaper than high protein food. Now, I know people look at protein and say, oh, it's so expensive, but they're looking at like a 5 pound container of protein powder that's $60 or $70 or whatever it is. The prices may vary depending on where you buy it and the type and the brand and everything else. But a lot of people look, oh man, that's a lot of money. Whereas I can go buy a steak for $5. Well, that steak is one meal. That protein has 30 or 40 or more servings in it. So think of like buying 30 or 40 steaks, right? When you factor it in on that kind of price comparison, protein powder generally works out cheaper on a gram for gram basis than most high protein foods. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have high protein foods, but it's nice to have the complementary balance in there. Like in my case, I'll probably have a couple scoops of protein per day to help meet my protein intake needs, and I enjoy it and it's convenient, but I still try to get the majority of my protein from real food, meat, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy, things like that. But you can certainly incorporate both on a fat loss cutting program or a muscle building program. In fact, there's very little difference between a fat loss program and a lean gain program other than the portions. Like if you're in a lean gain program, you're going to still be eating the same foods as you would if you were training for fat loss. You're just going to be eating more of them, and maybe a little more in the carbohydrate side of things as well, so that you're keeping your glycogen levels topped up and you're not in a depleted state. But it's not like there's two different diets. There's the bulking diet and the cutting diet. The food choices, the habits, the routine, it's pretty much the same for both. It's just we're going to eat a little less if we're focusing on fat loss so that we're in a calorie deficit. We're going to eat a little more so we're in a slight surplus if we're focusing on maximizing muscle growth. The actual diet and food choices and habits and everything else are very similar for both situations. And that's something that takes a bit of wrapping your mind around, because I know in my early days of bodybuilding, when I wanted to bulk up, it was like, okay, I'm going to eat everything and anything, right? Burgers and fries and peanut butter and jam sandwiches and just slamming whatever I could to get calories in. And hey, I gained weight all right, but it wasn't good weight. And then when I went on a cut, I was like, okay, it's got to be boiled chicken and broccoli. You got to suffer it out. And no, like it doesn't have to be this, extreme approach. Like you can find that happy medium and just focus on the natural unprocessed foods for both sides, whether it's bulking or cutting, and just adjust the portions accordingly. And it doesn't have to be that drastic of a change. Like for a calorie deficit, like start with a 10% deficit. For a calorie surplus, probably start with a 10% surplus, like little mini, just tipping the scale in favor of what it is you're trying to achieve, and not trying to, go balls to the wall with the extremes. Like I see this sometimes, like people think, well, I'm going on a cut, so I have to slash my calories to 1,000 a day. They're normally eating 3,000 plus calories a day, and then all of a sudden they think I got to have a 2,000 calorie deficit in order to lose fat. Like no, that's not sustainable. That's just too extreme. It's going to cause all kinds of metabolic issues and drive your hormones and your mental sanity and everything else out of state, right? You'll lose muscle, you'll go hangry and irritable, and you won't be able to sustain it. Vice versa, you see some people who try to go on a bulk, and they think instead of having a slight surplus, maybe a 10% surplus, they think, oh, I got to start slamming back, an extra 2,000 calories a day, right? I'm eating 3,000. Well, I got to be eating 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day in order to bulk. And yeah, you'll bulk all right, but you'll be bulking your belly, not anything else. So again, another long answer for a short question, but hopefully you found it insightful. What else? We got Bruce joining in. Bruce is a member of our Muscle After 40 program. Hey, Bruce. Says, Lee, I just got out of the doctor's office, catching you all while I wait for the missus to pick me up. Cheers. All right. Multitasking, right? Watching me while you're waiting for the missus. Glad to have you joining in. We have Lee Dunnigan joining us. Says, I have upped my water intake from 3 to 4 liters a day. Is this too much? I have a physical job, working outside. I also add some electrolytes in as well. I don't think that's too much at all. And the general rule of thumb when it comes to water is drink to drink enough so that you're not feeling thirsty. Like if you get thirsty, it's too late. You're already dehydrated by that point. So ideally, and now that I'm talking about it, I'm actually going to have a sip of water. You should be drinking in advance. And this is something I do. I keep a water bottle handy wherever I go. So I'm on my computer right now, got a water bottle handy. When I go anywhere in the car, keep a water bottle with me. When I go to the gym, I got a water bottle. When I go for a bike ride, I got 2 bottles. I usually take on my bike, but I always got water with me. And even as a backup, like in my car, I keep a case of water, and a box of protein bars. That's my backup. So if I'm out running errands and I get delayed and run out of water or run out of food, like, well, at least I got a reserve stash. So I don't need to get dehydrated or make poor food choices. So you want to drink so that you are staying ahead of your thirst, right? Like constantly sipping it throughout the day is a good habit to get into, and try to avoid getting thirsty, because once you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Your body's already, suffering the effects of dehydration to a small degree. Now, it's not extreme. And of course, if you rehydrate quickly thereafter, you can bounce back, but try to avoid that. And as far as the amount, that's going to vary depending on your environment, depending on how much you sweat, how much activity you're doing, even how much food you're eating, because the more food you eat, the more water you need to digest and absorb and utilize that food as well. So 4 liters a day, I don't think that's excessive by any stretch, and especially if you're balancing it out with electrolytes. And I like the fact that you're doing that as well, because the only negative issue that you can have from consuming extra water is if you're consuming extra water without balancing it out with electrolytes, sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and things like that. Because if you dilute yourself, you're consuming pure water and you don't have enough electrolytes in your system, then that can lead to an electrolyte imbalance, cramping, dizziness, lightheadedness, and in the extreme cases is hyponatremia, I believe is what it's called, where it really throws things out of balance. And in extreme cases, it can actually be fatal, if you consume too much water with not enough electrolytes, because the water can't get utilized in the body properly, because the electrolytes is what transports that water into the cells and allows it to be utilized. So salt, sodium, potassium, like they're not the bad guys, especially sodium. Like a lot of people you hear in the mainstream media, oh, salt, don't eat salt, it's bad for you, blah, blah, blah. It's not that salt is bad for you. It's that you're not drinking enough water to utilize the salt, because the way it works is it's almost virtually impossible to consume too much salt unless you were like chowing it down in excess, like chowing on salt blocks or something, I don't know, or just drinking bottles of soya sauce or something gross like that. But if you're consuming salt and even foods that contain high amounts of salt and condiments, as long as you're drinking enough water that your body can utilize it, what's going to happen is it's going to use what it needs and then flush out the rest, whether it flushes it out in your sweat or flushes it out in your urine. So I would actually err on the side of higher sodium intake. And I have to in my case, because I'm very active and I sweat a lot. And I also purposely make sure that I'm drinking adequate water. So I want to utilize it and then flush it out. The excess will get flushed out in my urine and flushed out in my sweat. So I don't shy away from sodium and electrolytes. And same with the water. I make sure to drink according to my thirst. And the little tip that this is kind of like my check and balance, and it's easy to use to know if you're well hydrated or not, is when you go to the loo to take a pee, look at the color of your pee. If it's dark yellow, you should be drinking more water. If it's light yellow or clear, you're good. It's very simple, but it's something that you do multiple times a day. So you have multiple little checks throughout the day to know if you're adequately hydrated or not. All right. If the pee starts to get dark, then you want to be drinking more water. Or if the frequency of your pee is not often enough, then you want to be drinking more water. And generally, if you're not peeing often, then the pee you do is usually dark in color. So we want to have more frequent, more clear pees. And that's the sign that you're well hydrated and everything is functioning well and you're flushing that through your system. So 4 liters a day is not excessive in my opinion, especially for someone who's active and working out, a physical job, sweating a lot, everything else. In fact, that's probably even on the conservative side. You may even need more. All right, let's see. Bobby is joining in. He made it. Congratulations, my friend. Glad to have you joining here. He says, I'm having a hell of a time finding the calorie deficit sweet spot. I have an appointment with the nutritionist coming up next week. We'll see what they say. Well, you know what? Congratulations for actually going and seeing somebody about this. Because a lot of people, when they're struggling, they suffer in silence and they don't do anything about it. But seeing a nutritionist, seeing someone who can help you to figure this out is certainly a smart move on your part. So kudos to you for doing that. And I have a feeling, I don't know who you're going to see and everything else, but if you're seeing a good nutritionist, they're going to focus mostly on nutritional habits first and not so much the calories, right? Like this is something that I really specialize in. Like I'm certified precision nutrition, coach, as well as a master health coach. And we really focus on this. And the key is not so much getting hung up on counting calories. And I actually made a video talking about this a while back. If you just do a search for Lee Hayward, counting calories, it should pop up in the search, or just go to my YouTube channel and scroll through my recent videos. It's fairly recent, within the last couple months. You should see it there in the upload list. But counting calories is not an exact science. It's far from it. And because the food labels are not accurate to start with, right? Food labels are legally allowed to be off by 20%. So even if something says, hey, there's 100 calories per serving, that could be 80 calories or it could be 120 calories. And chances are it's probably going to be on the high end, because food companies know if they can put a lower number on the label, people are more likely to buy it because they'll think it's a low calorie food and have less guilt. So if there's a discrepancy, it's probably not in your favor, right? So they might say, hey, this is 100 calories, but it's really more than that. And other things you got to factor in as well is, even for foods that don't have labels, the calorie count can vary greatly just depending on the food. I'll give you one example, like beef. You take a steak. How many calories are in a steak? Well, it depends on the cut of steak. It depends on how much fat is in it, how much lean is in it. Did you trim the fat or did you not trim the fat? How did you prepare it, right? Did you grill it? Did you fry it in oil? Or like, how did you prepare? Because all these things can drastically change the calorie count of a food. Another thing we got to look at is not all calories are absorbed, right? Sometimes we'll eat foods and some foods are only partially absorbed. So you may be, pooing out undigested food. And that's actually quite common, like especially when you're eating the natural unprocessed foods that have fiber and roughage and everything else. Like you're not necessarily going to consume and absorb all the calories from unprocessed foods. Whereas the processed ones that have all the fiber and roughage stripped out, and it's simple sugars and simple carbohydrates and things like that, and fats and whatever, a lot of the junk food calories are easy to absorb, and your body will probably absorb more of those calories versus if you ate natural unprocessed foods. Like if you had a 2,000 calorie diet, one was lean protein, natural unprocessed foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, that kind of stuff. And then another 2,000 calorie diet that was made up of processed foods, breads and crackers and, crisps and cakes and cookies, but you still kept it at 2,000 calories. The differences between those 2,000 calorie diets could be drastic. First off, you're not going to fully absorb all 2,000 calories if it's from natural unprocessed foods, because some of those calories are going to get passed through undigested and unabsorbed. So you'll be in a deficit just from that alone. And then also the metabolic impacts, like there's less blood sugar spike when you're eating natural unprocessed foods. There's more nutrient density. There's more satiation in those foods. Whereas the unprocessed, simple carbohydrate foods, they spike your blood sugar, they jack up your appetite, they don't nourish you as well, and there's a lot of other things. So it goes way beyond counting calories, right? That's what I'm getting at. And if you see a good nutritionist, hopefully they will break this down for you as well and explain that it's not just about counting calories, it's about nutrition habits. And this is what we really focus on within the Muscle After 40 Blueprint program. Because a lot of guys come in like you, like, oh, I need to find my calories and whatever, and I try to eat 1,500 calories a day, but it doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. And we like, forget the freaking calories. Let's focus on the habits first. Let's focus on nailing down sound nutrition habits and making better food choices. And in doing that, we really fine tune a lot of this stuff. And naturally, they start eating better. And a lot of times, guys are surprised with how much food they can actually eat, because now not only are you burning body fat, but you're building lean muscle in the process. You're optimizing your metabolism, optimizing hormone levels, and you actually get into this body recomposition state where you're building muscle, burning body fat, and feeling stronger and more energetic, versus just in this crash diet calorie deficit where you feel like crap and your hunger's through the roof and you're hangry, right? So there's a lot more to nutrition than just counting calories, right? That's what I'm getting at. And hopefully when you have your appointment with the nutritionist that you're seeing, they will address this. And if they don't, that would be a red flag in my opinion. Like if they just say, oh yeah, here's your calorie intake, and as long as you have a calorie deficit, it doesn't matter what you eat, blah, blah, blah. I'd be a bit sketchy. But anyway, let me know how it goes. Message me back and let me know how it goes. What else we got there, guys? Let's see. Neil is joining in. Welcome, Neil. Good morning. Says it's been a while since you're doing Q&A in your home gym. Yes, it is. I actually came down here because it's very hot and humid here today. I think it might be Hurricane Lee, which is off in the Atlantic. For those of you in North America, I'm sure if you've been watching the weather in the news, you've heard about Hurricane Lee, and Lee looks like he could be a bad one. But it's really creating a lot of heat and humidity. Like it's above seasonal temperatures and above seasonal humidity. So I came down here in the basement home gym because it's cooler, and that's why I'm down here today. But anyway, he says, I want to know how much to rest between sets for hypertrophy. There's no one size fits all answer, but I'll give you some guidelines for this. First off, when you're training for size and strength, don't rush your sets. Rest as long as you feel you need. Like you don't want to be experiencing cardiovascular fatigue from your strength training workouts. You want to be achieving muscular fatigue. So if you're still gasping for air and you're trying to rush from exercise to exercise, I mean, that can be good from a conditioning and metabolic and building up your endurance and your work capacity, but it's not ideal for maximizing strength and hypertrophy. So if your goal is to build strength and size, don't rush your workouts. Take your time and take adequate rest between sets. Allow your breathing to return to normal, allow your heart rate to return to normal, and mentally and physically prepare for the next set. So don't rush it. A good guideline is probably in the vicinity of 2 minutes between sets. Now, for big, heavy lifts like squats and deadlifts and things like that, you may want to push it. So especially if you're doing a hard max effort set, you might want to do 3 minutes between sets. If it's a small isolation exercise, you might want to go 1 to 2 minutes between sets. Like if it's just bicep curls or calf raises or abdominal work, something like that, 1 to 2 minutes would probably be plenty. But if you're doing a heavy compound lift, 2 minutes at least, and maybe even 3 in that 2 to 3 minute range would be a good benchmark. Right now, of course, you can adjust it accordingly. Like if you feel you need more, then take more. Like a lot of times when you look at power lifters, for example, especially when they're doing heavy max effort lifts, taking a 5 minute rest between sets, max effort sets, is not uncommon in a powerlifting gym. And if you've ever seen like World's Strongest Man competitors, when they're doing their events, they take massive rest periods. Like I remember a few years back, we had a strongman expo here in town. It was in St. John's, out at the recycling depot. Right, they had it set up out there because the guy who owns the recycling depot was from Iceland, and he had connections with a lot of the Icelandic strongmen. So we had Magnus for Magnusson come down, and a couple of the new up and coming guys from Iceland came over and put off an exhibition. It wasn't a competition; it was just an exhibition and a bit of ego lifting amongst the strongman guys, which was really cool. But like they go out and do something, like whatever it was, some crazy lifts or truck pull or whatever, some of the crazy strongman shit they do. And then it was like, all right, guys, 10-minute break or 15-minute break. And then he's going to come out and do the next event. Like, it took him that long to recover and then mentally prepare and get ready for the next event. So like, that's a slow process, but they're exerting such effort in those all out attempts that they need to rest, recover, and then mentally prepare for the next effort. Now, that's the extreme end. And I'm not saying take 10-minute rest breaks between sets in the gym, but I'm just showing you how, the guys who are maximizing strength and hypertrophy, they're not rushing their workouts, right? They're not doing 30 seconds between sets. They're taking their time. So if you want to know how to maximize it, then just take your time and think of achieving muscular fatigue, not cardiovascular fatigue. You shouldn't be gasping for air and running out of gas as fatigue. You should be hitting muscular failure from fatigue. So use that as like your benchmark. Now, with that being said, when you're doing cardiovascular training, hey, that's the time when you can push it and elevate your heart rate and train for cardiovascular fitness. That's fine. And you should include both, but don't try and mix and match. Like, that's a common thing. I see a lot of guys, they try to make their weight training cardio at the same time. I'll just lift weights faster and that'll be my cardio. No, it's not the same. I mean, it's better than nothing, don't get me wrong, but if you want to maximize your strength gains and get the most benefit from your weight training, don't treat your weight training like a cardio workout. And vice versa. Don't treat your cardio like a weight training workout, right? See guys trying to do heavy body weight exercises nonstop and think, well, this is my strength training and my cardio. Like, no, right? They're two different exercises, two different energy systems, and you want to train them appropriately. All right, where else? Let's see what else. Another question here. This one is from Ange. Says, a lot of times when I expect to have a bad workout after having a couple nights of poor sleep and generally feeling tired, a lot of the times those workouts go better than previous ones. That was in response, I guess, to our earlier questions we had about sleep. And you know what? Sometimes that can happen. I can certainly relate to that. Like, there's been times where I didn't sleep as well as I thought I should, and then performed really well. And I think the big thing we want to focus on is it's the accumulation. Like, if you've been sleeping well most of the time, but then had an occasional bad night of sleep, you can probably still perform good the next day. And I'll give you a prime example of this in my own experience recently, like this year. It's happened because I've been doing my main form of fitness now. For those of you who, especially if you follow me over on Facebook, I post a lot of pictures, is cycling. So I've gotten into doing a lot of cycling, and I've even competed in some of our local races. So I've done the provincial road cycling championships. We had a spring event, as our Pooch Cove Spring Classic road race. I also participated in a triathlon relay where I did the cycling portion. So I did a time trial there. And I find, like, sometimes when I know that there's the pressure is on, like, okay, next day is race day, I kind of get the pre-race jitters, or I don't know if it's jitters or whatever, but like, you're just amped up, right? Excited and got a lot of things on your mind and everything else. And sometimes I don't sleep as well the night before because I'm excited for the event the next day. And I even found this when I was competing in bodybuilding. Like, the night before a competition, I'd be so amped up and, excited that very often my sleep the night before a bodybuilding competition would suck, right? Because I, like a kid waiting for Christmas or something, I get excited leading up to it, and it made it harder to sleep. But in the days leading up to that, as long as I had good sleep in the days leading up to it, that carried over. Because one bad day or one bad night of sleep is not going to throw everything off. It's usually the accumulation. So if you've had several bad nights of sleep, yeah, that's going to hinder your performance. But if it's just one, it's usually not a big deal. And I can attest to that. Like, I've had, like, I know the nights before some of those races where it's kind of like I'd nod off and I'd wake up, and I'd nod off and I'd wake up. It's kind of like that kind of, disrupted sleep throughout the night, but I still performed and hit personal bests the next day. So, don't think because you had one bad night of sleep that it's going to ruin a workout or ruin your performance. It's usually the accumulation of poor sleep. So that the fatigue builds up, right? That's when it really becomes problematic. But one bad night usually is not enough to throw things off. And that we can take that principle to and expand it to other areas. Like one bad meal is not going to ruin your diet, nor is one good meal going to, make you have a stellar diet. One bad workout isn't going to ruin your training program, or one good workout isn't going to make your training program. It's the accumulation. What are you having more of? Are you having more good days than bad? Right? Are you having more good meals than bad? Are you having more good workouts than bad? Are you having more good night sleeps than bad? It's the accumulation. That's the big thing. And you got to get out of this all or nothing mindset and think of the bigger picture. And it's the accumulation. Like an analogy that I like to use as well is think of running a business. Like if we have a business, we don't have to turn a profit every single day to have a profitable business. Like there's going to be some days where you lose money and some days where you make money. As long as you have more days where your income exceeds your expenses, and you can have a profitable business, even though there's going to be days in there where you lose money, right? Like it's the balance, right? And that's what you got to think of with your fitness. It's the long-term balance. What are you doing most of the time? Not getting into this all or nothing trap, where this is a common one for a lot of people, because they think, well, if I have a bad meal, oh shit, I've ruined everything. I knew I couldn't do this. And then that just spirals out of control. And then they have more bad meals as they wallow in their self-pity. Like prime example, it's Friday. Like, let's just say there's some people out there now who are on a cutting diet, and they think, oh, I've been doing well on my diet all week long. And then Friday night rolls around, and in a moment of weakness, they have a cheat meal. And then they're like, oh, I knew I couldn't stick with it. Screw it. I'm going to cheat all weekend, and diet starts again on Monday. So they're going to cheat Friday night. They're going to cheat all day Saturday. And gosh darn it, they're going to cheat on Sunday, because they got to get the cravings and everything out of their system, because Monday the diet starts again. Whereas if they just had the cheat meal and then say, you know what, I'm going to get back on track for my very next meal. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm just going to forgive, correct, continue, start again. You can minimize the damage in between those. And this is where a lot of people go wrong is, they can diet from Monday to Thursday, no problem. But then once Friday hits, all hell breaks loose. And then they can undo whatever progress they made from Monday to Thursday, from Friday evening to Sunday evening, then they end up stuck in a rut. I'm speaking from experience. That's why I can speak about this, because I've done it multiple times, right? Multiple times. And then of course, diet starts on Monday. Everybody starts on Monday with the best of intentions. And then by the end of the week, those best of intentions are gone like a fart in the wind. And for, you undo all the progress you made over the weekend, and then you got to start again. Right. So it's like I took 2 steps forward during the week, and then I took 2 steps back on the weekend, and I'm always stuck in a plateau. Can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. And that could be also the problem there. Going back to Bobby, who's having a hell of a time finding his calorie deficit. That may be the issue. You might be in your calorie deficit, or even in an aggressive calorie deficit from Monday to Thursday. And then starting on Friday evening and over the weekend, you might be in a big calorie surplus. And then so the end result is you're not making any freaking progress, right? Even though you're dieting half the time, you're not making any progress, right? It's what you're doing most of the time. That's the big one. All right. Again, where was I to? I got lost track there. Sometimes when I get talking, like I'll take a question and just go off on a tangent and I could make an hour-long video chat on one question, I think. And look, we've already gone past our hour, so I'll just answer a couple more and then we'll clue it up. John saying back on track after getting off the road for a long time. Good stuff. And you know what? Even when you're on the road traveling or whatever, there's still ways to make the best of your situation. Might not be perfect, but there's always ways to make the best of your current situation. What else we got? Andy's Kitchen Garden says, Lee, if you do a lot of back rows and push downs, can you get away from not doing bicep exercises? Will it increase bicep injuries? Can back workouts be enough for bicep development? It depends. If you genetically have really good biceps, and you may, because biceps come into play with the back. Like whenever you do a rowing or a pull down or a pull up or any of those type of rowing or pulling exercises, the biceps are coming into play as a secondary muscle group, right? It's you know, the muscles of the back, you know, the lats, the rhomboids, the traps, and whatever, all those muscles that are in the pulling, and then the biceps and the forearms are the secondary and supporting. Oh, excuse me. So yes, you will still get bicep stimulation from your back work. Will it be enough? It depends. It really depends. Because like I know some people who just genetically got huge arms and they really don't need to do a lot of isolation work to keep those arms growing. Whereas other people, they probably have genetically stubborn arms and they need to add in the extra isolation work in order to maximize growth. In my case, my arms are not a strong body part for me. I have to bust my ass for every bit of progress I make with arm training. So I need to do extra arm isolation work and have arm days in order to make progress. You know, they've always been a lagging body part for me. Whereas chest, back, legs, especially calves, those muscles came easier. Like I have huge calves and I don't do any calf work, right? Like, or very little. I mean, I won't say I don't do any calf work, because I mean, obviously your calves are coming in as secondary and supporting muscle groups as well. And I do a lot of cycling, which also indirectly works them. But you don't see me in there banging out endless sets of calf raises at the gym because I don't need to, right? I got huge calves, and I always had huge calves ever since, even before I started working out, my calves were bigger than average. So it depends on your genetic structure. So if you naturally have huge biceps, or biceps respond really easily for you, then maybe you don't need to do extra bicep work, and they can still stay in proportion to all your other muscle groups. You know, just the secondary work you get from your back will be enough to stimulate the biceps and keep them as well, right? So it depends on the individual there, right? It's not a one size fits all cookie cutter answer. It really depends on you and your specific situation. But this is something that you'll adjust as you become more experienced with your workouts, because like generally speaking, when someone's starting off brand new, I'd like them to work all their major muscle groups in balance and proportion, and don't neglect anything. And very often the way we structure our workouts, you know, for my Muscle After 40 students who are going through it, we work agonist and antagonist movement patterns. So we'll do like a horizontal press, a horizontal pull, a overhead press, overhead pull, bicep curl, tricep extension, leg curl, leg extension. You know, we'll do a abdominal work, lower back work. You know, like we work all the major muscle groups in balance and proportion, and work an agonist and antagonist movements, basically opposing movement patterns. So nothing gets neglected, right? We want to hit everything in balance and proportion. Then after they've been doing that for a while, whether it's several weeks or several months or however long, but long enough to start to see some results, then we can kind of do an analysis of how their body is responding. And if certain muscles tend to be responding better than others, then maybe we can start to manipulate the volume. And for the body parts that are responding really well and seem to be growing faster, maybe we can scale those back. And the ones that are a bit more stubborn, we can prioritize and give those some extra attention. And in extreme cases, then you may even be able to kind of like temporarily take a break from training certain muscle groups. It's like in my case, I rarely do direct calf work. I may train calves once a month because I just want to maintain the tendon and ligament strength in my Achilles, you know, and my ankles. So I will do it from that point of view. I usually probably will do calf raises at the gym once a month, but I'm not doing it to try and build bigger calves, because quite honestly, I don't want them to be any bigger. They're just naturally big. I would rather have bigger arms, but that's an area that I got to focus on. So this is something that you really need to find out for yourself. And if you need some help, this is where having a coach with the experience can help. You know, someone who's been there and done that and has worked with other people can help you to fine tune. Okay, this is where we need to manipulate your workouts accordingly. So again, if you'd like some help with this, or even just brainstorm and have a chat about it, feel free to reach out to me and we can discuss this. Right? You know, down in the description below this video, I got a link where you can reach out to me or friend me up on Facebook, or even schedule in for a free strategy session call, and we can discuss your situation, and brainstorm some ideas. All right, I'm going to get ready and clue this up because I know I've already gone long, but there's only a couple more, so I'll see if I can just bang them out real quick. Ryan says, I'm curious, do you use a fitness watch? If you do, Do you find the heart rate sensor to be accurate? I don't use a fitness watch. I use a heart rate strap. So when I go for bike rides, and I only track my heart rate when I go for bike rides. If I'm doing cardio at the cardio machines at the gym, I usually just use the heart rate sensor on the cardio machines. But for me, cycling is my primary form of cardio, and that's the one that I'm tracking because that's the area I want to improve. But I use the chest strap. And actually, here it is, the little thing that, the chest, and this goes right there on the center of your chest and monitors your heart rate. Those, I think, are more accurate, but you want to keep tabs on it because they do wear out, right? They do wear out. And if you start seeing some really weird numbers, like it's abnormally low or it's abnormally high, then it may be wearing out. Because what happens, I had one of these, this one's just kind of like a no-name brand I got off Amazon. It works amazing. It's COSPRO is what it is. COOSPO or COSPO, I don't know, but search for heart rate monitor on Amazon. This is what I found. I don't know if you can see it there. COSPO. This was a cheap one, but it had really good reviews, and I've been using it, and it's been amazing. Now, before this, I had a Wahoo heart rate monitor, and when it was new, it worked great. But then after a couple of years, it was acting funky. So sometimes my heart rate would be like, I'd be doing good cardio, sweat going on, and it says heart rate 40 beats a minute, 30, 40, 50 beats a minute. I'm like, no, there's no way, right? I'm well above that. And then there's other times I could be doing my warm up and it's like 200 beats a minute, like it was very all over the place. Once it got to that stage, I just said, this is not accurate. This is useless. So I scrapped it and got another one. But when it was new, it was actually working really good. And I think what happens is the sweat eventually just deteriorates and like gets into the metal there, and it starts to rust and corrode a little bit. So a little tip that I do whenever I'm finished with my heart rate monitor, because it is usually sweaty, I always take it off the strap, wipe it down, and I usually put it somewhere like maybe in front of a fan or wherever so the air can get at it to dry it out. And if it's really wet, sometimes I've even opened it up, taken the battery out, and let it all air dry. Because that was, I think, the problem with my old one, the Wahoo I had, was I wasn't as consistent. Like I'd just take it off and then hang it up to dry, but I think the sweat and everything else just corroded it and wore it out. I mean, everything's going to wear out eventually, but there's things you can do to prolong the lifespan. And I think that was something that I did for my heart rate monitor to prolong the lifespan of it. And that's what I use. And I find that tends to be accurate, but you're still going to get some weird spikes. So you look at it as a general rule of thumb, and your perceived effort should match the numbers. Like if your perceived effort is really high and the numbers are really low, then I wouldn't factor that in, or vice versa. If your perceived effort is, super low and the numbers on the heart rate monitor are really high, then I say, it's a glitch. It's just some reason it's not tracking properly. But generally speaking, I'd say like well over 90% of the time, it's in line, and I think it's quite accurate. But every now and then you will get some weird spikes. So they're not 100% accurate. I don't think any of them are, but they can be used as a good guideline. The thing that you want to be extra cautious of is the extreme highs and the extreme lows. Like I had at one time during a race recently where I think it went up to 220 beats a minute. And I don't think for the life of me I hit 220 beats a minute. I was probably in the high hundreds, but 220, no. I mean, it might have been just a glitch, right? So yeah. Take it with a grain of salt, and always use your own perceived effort. And this is something I was actually having a conversation with one of my coaching students about this, who tracks using a Garmin for his workouts and stuff. You use the numbers as a guideline, but don't take it literally. Like your perceived exertion, your perceived level of recovery or fatigue or whatever, that's more powerful than whatever, any gadget. Like knowing and listening to your body is more powerful. It's nice when the numbers on the gadget relate to what you're actually feeling in your body and it kind of parallels. But if there's a big discrepancy, like the gadget says you're recovered, but you're feeling like you've been hit by a Mack truck, then go by your body. Like Just because the gadget says, hey, you're recovered, you're good to go, but you don't feel it, then you're not good to go. Vice versa, the gadget may say, oh, your recovery is really low, but you're feeling awesome. I'd go with how you're feeling, right? More so. But it's nice when they do align. And, you know, I found that they generally do parallel, but if there are any discrepancies, listen to your body, right? You know your body better than any gadget does. And there's always room for technical glitches with electronics. All right, I'm going to get ready and clue this up. Let's see, Steve saying, great advice, thumbs up, appreciate it. Glad you enjoyed the video chat. And for those of you who are watching this, if you found this helpful and got some value from it, please smash that thumbs up button or give it a heart or a like or a whatever the heck it is, you know. Show a bit of support. That always helps the algorithms for Facebook and YouTube and everything else. So I do appreciate that. Let's see what else we got. Excellent explanation. Training doesn't work without adequate recovery. That's Jason there. Appreciate that, Jason. What else we got there? Ron. Oh, Bruce was saying to Ron Rodriguez, while they're good for you, they won't cause weight loss on their own. Calories in versus calories out. Be consistent. Make 1% better choices and 1% bad. They'll all add up. Appreciate that, Bruce. Andy's Kitchen is progressing to the next weight by is progressing to the next weight by doing 2 extra reps sufficient, or would you add a set and go back to the original sets on the new weight? It really depends. You know, there's not a hard set rule. This is kind of like a follow-up question to one where we're talking about progressive overload, when to increase the weights. You really got to listen to your body. Like in some exercises, you may want to do more than 2 extra reps before you know, if you're working within a rep range. Like I believe it was for TS's question, I actually recommended an 8 to 12 rep range. So that's a 4 rep range, but you could go more. Like it's not a hard set rule. Like you could even do between 10 to 15 reps, you know, if we want. And they say, okay, when I build up to 15 reps, then I'm going to drop the reps back down, increase the weight, and then build up the reps again, right? It's not a hard set rule. It's a guideline. So use your own discrepancy there. I mean, if you feel that working up to say 15 reps with a certain weight and then dropping it back to 10, increasing to the next heaviest set of dumbbells, for example, and then building the reps back up, if that works for you, then do it. If it doesn't and you feel that it's you need more, then you can build up more repetitions in reserve before you increase the weight. Right? Or again, you could add an extra set. That's another way of progressive overload. Right? You could do, instead of doing 3 sets, you could, you know, build up the reps and also add a 4th set, you know, and then drop it back down again, drop down to 3 sets and drop the reps down. I actually have designed programs which I call volume ramping. And that's the whole method of the program. Is you start with a low volume, and then you build up the volume week by week by week, and then you drop it back down again, increase the weight and build it up like a ramp. So it's a volume ramping program. Right. That's actually one that I put out for my Total Fitness Bodybuilding Inner Circle a while back. But yeah, again, there's multiple ways to go on about it. Platinum Gaming HD says, I got a new PR of 335 at 225 body weight, 20 years old, because of your chest workout videos. Thank you very much. That's impressive, man. Good for you. A 300+ pound bench press is respectable. And at 20 years old, kudos to you, man. That is downright impressive. Yeah. Way to go. Again, I think we probably mentioned this in previous video chats when you've hit PRs. Kudos to you for hitting the PR, and I'm going to encourage you to keep pushing. But listen to your body, because those bench press PRs, it's you're walking a knife's edge, because yeah, you can make some amazing gains and it's great for the ego and everything else, but there's been more torn pecs and torn rotator cuffs and everything else from PR bench pressing than any other exercise. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And as you're doing your warm-up weights, if it doesn't feel right, there's, you know, you're just feeling, you listen to your body. And if, as you're doing those lighter warm-ups and progressing up to your heavy sets, if the shoulders don't feel right, if the pec gives you a little twinge, you're like, oh, I don't know, man. It's not, if there's any doubt, leave it out, right? Let's live to lift another day versus saying, don't be a wuss and push through the pain. those are famous last words, right? Because that's usually when an injury happens. So again, kudos to you for hitting the new PR, and I'm going to encourage you to keep pushing, but realize it's like walking a knife's edge, right? You're every time you hit a new PR, like you're close to hitting that PR and having a massive victory, and you're also close to having a massive injury, right? Every time. So be cautious. That's all. Proceed with caution. Let's see. I think we want to clue it up now. There's a few other people just sharing in some questions. Oh, geez, a lot more came through there. But we're already at an hour, 20 minutes, and my wife has dinner cooked and probably on the table waiting for me. She knows me long enough. When I say, yeah, I'm going to go do an hour video chat, she knows that probably means an hour and a half. But I'm going to clue it up for her benefit as well. So, again, appreciate you for participating. I appreciate all the questions. We always get some great questions come through, and we got a good group of guys joining in. So I'm going to clue it up. But in the meantime, if there's anything that we covered here that you would like to elaborate on or want some more feedback on, feel free to reach out. You can send me an email. Or you can message me through Facebook. If we're not friends on Facebook and you're active over there, friend me up. Or you can also join us at the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. All right, we've got a group there. Just search for Lee Hayward's Total Fitness Bodybuilding and you request to join the group. It's a great way to keep the conversation going in between these live video chats. So feel free to do that. And in the meantime, have yourself a fantastic weekend. I look forward to talking to you next Friday. Take care. Over and out.